That night started like any other ordinary evening at home. The quiet hum of the TV was filling the living room, and I was just settling down, hoping to relax after a long day. My sister came in and sat down right next to me on the couch, closer than usual. At first, I thought maybe she just wanted to watch something together, but as the minutes passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. Something was off. The way she looked at me, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, it all felt strange. It wasn't the sister I knew. We barely spoke, but there was this heavy silence hanging between us. I tried to ignore it, telling myself maybe I was just overthinking. But deep down, I knew that night wasn't going to be like the others. There was a secret she was hiding, something weighing on her mind, and it was slowly creeping into the space between us. The air felt tense, and every small movement made me more anxious, more curious about what was really going on. I've always trusted my sister. She's been my closest family, my confidant, someone I believed I knew inside out. But now, sitting so close to me, she seemed distant in a way I hadn't seen before. There was a story behind that silence, a story I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. It was like she was carrying a burden, one that was tearing her apart, and somehow, I felt it was connected to something much bigger than just her mood. As the night went on, my mind kept racing with questions. Why did she seem so guarded? Was she hiding something from me? And most importantly, did this have anything to do with the cracks I'd started noticing in our family? I remembered the small signs I had ignored before, the phone calls she hurriedly ended when I walked in, the secretive messages she quickly deleted, the late nights she couldn't explain. All of it started to make sense now, but in a way that made my heart sink. I wanted to ask her directly, to break through the wall she'd built around herself. But every time I opened my mouth, the words got stuck. Fear, confusion, and disbelief tangled inside me. Could it be that she was involved in something I never expected? Something that would change everything I thought I knew about loyalty, trust, and family? That night, sitting side by side, I realized that whatever was happening, it wasn't just about her, it was about all of us. The closer she sat, the heavier the silence became, and I felt a chill run down my spine. There was a secret that night, one that I was about to uncover, but it wasn't going to be easy. The truth was waiting, buried beneath the surface, and it would change our lives forever. I just didn't know it yet. What happened after that night? What did she finally reveal? And how did it affect the bond we shared? Stay with me, because this is a true story about trust, betrayal, and the painful journey of facing hard truths. You won't want to miss what comes next. For as long as I could remember, my sister and I had been inseparable. We grew up sharing secrets, dreams, and even our biggest fears. She was my best friend, the person I could always count on no matter what. But over the past few months, something had started to change. It wasn't sudden, it was quiet, subtle, like a shadow creeping into the edges of our relationship. I noticed how she began spending more time on her phone, often locking it the moment I came near. She stopped inviting me to hang out like before, and when I asked, she brushed it off with vague excuses. At first, I thought maybe she was just going through a phase, or stressed out with her own things. But that night on the couch, sitting so close yet feeling so far, made me realize there was more to it. The tension in the house was growing too. Our parents were busy with work, and the usual warmth in our family dinners was replaced with silence or awkward small talk. I could feel the cracks forming but didn't know where they led. Then there were those times I overheard hushed voices, or caught her staring out the window lost in thought. I wanted to help, but I wasn't sure how to break through the wall she'd built around herself. I started piecing things together. A few weeks before that night, I had noticed her coming home late, sometimes acting nervous when I asked where she'd been. She once left her phone unattended, and a message popped up on the screen, just a name, no words. I didn't recognize it, but the way she quickly grabbed it and smiled nervously told me she was hiding something. It wasn't like her at all. I wanted to believe it was innocent, but my gut told me otherwise. There's something about betrayal that's hard to explain until you live it. It's not just about broken promises, it's about the sudden shift in everything you thought was safe and certain. And when it comes from someone you love, it cuts the deepest. That night, as we sat side by side in that quiet room, I felt the weight of all those unspoken things between us. I wanted to reach out, to ask the questions that were burning inside me, but fear kept my voice silent. What if the truth was worse than I imagined? What if my sister was caught in something I couldn't fix? I kept wondering if she was struggling with a secret that involved more than just herself. Maybe someone else was involved, someone who shouldn't be. Was it just a mistake she made, or something bigger, something that could tear our family apart? The silence between us was deafening, and every glance felt like a piece of a puzzle I was desperate to solve. This wasn't just about suspicion anymore, it was about trust, love, and the painful realization that sometimes the people closest to us carry burdens we never see. That night marked the beginning of a journey I never wanted to take but couldn't avoid. I was about to uncover things that would change everything, and the question was, could I handle the truth when it finally came out? The days following that night felt heavier than ever. I couldn't focus on anything else, work, friends, even my own thoughts kept drifting back to my sister and the strange distance growing between us. I tried to talk to her, gently at first, but every time I brought up anything close to what I was feeling, she'd shut down or change the subject. It was like walking on thin ice, not knowing when it would break. What made it worse was the way our family seemed unaware of the tension. Mom and Dad were wrapped up in their own routines, busy with jobs and worries, not noticing the silent storm brewing at home. My sister's behavior was so different that sometimes I wondered if I was imagining it all. But then there were the late-night noises from her room, the secretive messages she hurriedly deleted when I walked by, and those moments when she'd stare out the window, lost in her own world, like she was carrying something unbearable. One evening, I overheard her on the phone, voice low and hurried, speaking to someone whose name I didn't recognize. Her tone wasn't the warm, carefree one I was used to, it was tense, almost scared. I wanted to intervene but held back, unsure if I should respect her privacy or find out what was going on before it was too late. I began to wonder if my sister was involved in something more complicated than just hiding personal feelings. Could there be another person, someone outside our family, who was pulling her into a secret she couldn't share? The thought of betrayal didn't just hurt me emotionally, it scared me. Not just for her, but for everyone around her. What if this secret was dangerous? What if it was tearing her apart in ways I couldn't understand? I tried reaching out to a few close friends she used to talk to, hoping to get some answers. But they were either as confused as I was or clearly avoiding the topic. It felt like everyone was shutting me out. The walls closing in made me feel more isolated than ever. At the same time, I was battling my own doubts. Was I jumping to conclusions? Was I losing trust in the person I loved most? But every little clue, every moment of silence, kept feeding the suspicion that something serious was going on. Something that could change everything. The biggest conflict wasn't just about uncovering the truth, it was about deciding what to do once I had it. Could I confront her and risk pushing her away? Or should I wait, hoping she'd open up when she was ready? The tension was unbearable, and each day passed with more questions than answers. What was my sister hiding? And how deep did this secret go? The answers felt just out of reach, and the more I searched, the darker the path seemed to get. It all came to a head one weekend when our parents went out of town for a wedding. It was just me and my sister at home, and the silence between us felt louder than ever. I kept telling myself this was the chance to talk, to finally ask her what was going on. But every time I tried to open the door to that conversation, something in her eyes stopped me. She looked tired, emotionally drained, as if she was carrying the weight of 2 lives. And I wasn't sure anymore if I was ready to hear the truth she was hiding. That Saturday evening, I noticed her pacing in the backyard, phone in hand, deep in a conversation that lasted longer than usual. She didn't notice I was watching from the kitchen window. Her body language, her expressions, the way she kept glancing toward the house, it all screamed that she was nervous. She ended the call abruptly and came inside. Her eyes met mine for a second, and I could see it was fear. Not fear of being caught, but fear of what might happen if the truth came out. I decided to stay up late that night. I wanted to know what she was planning. I told myself I wasn't snooping, I was protecting my family. Around midnight, I heard her quietly unlock the front door. I followed at a distance, heart pounding, my footsteps silent. She walked down the block, past the streetlight, and disappeared into a dark car that had been parked there for hours. That moment froze everything. I couldn't see who was in the car, but I knew this wasn't just some casual meeting. I waited until the car drove off before I walked back inside, completely numb. My mind was racing. Was she involved with someone she wasn't supposed to be? Was it someone close to us? My thoughts spiraled, connecting dots that may or may not have been real. The secrecy, the late nights, the emotional distance, none of it felt harmless anymore. That night, sleep was impossible. I kept hearing her voice from earlier calls, thinking about her nervous looks, and wondering who she was meeting in that car. The worst part was that I still didn't know how far this had gone. Was this just emotional betrayal, or something deeper? More damaging? The next morning, I knew I had to confront her. I had no idea what she would say, but I felt the ground shifting beneath me. Whatever she told me now would change everything, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for the truth. The next morning, I waited for her at the kitchen table. My mind was a mess, but I kept my voice calm when she walked in, acting like I hadn't stayed up all night thinking about the car, the man, the secrecy. She gave me a soft good morning, avoiding eye contact as she poured herself coffee. I watched her carefully, searching for any sign of guilt or hesitation. But she acted like nothing had happened. That almost hurt more than anything else, how easily she slipped into pretending. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I asked her where she had gone the night before. She froze for a second, spoon in midair, then smiled like she'd misheard me. "What do you mean?" she asked, playing innocent. But her voice cracked just slightly, and that was all I needed to know. I pushed harder, not accusing, just asking, but my words were sharp with the weight of everything I'd been holding back. Then, just when I thought she might come clean, she did something unexpected. She stood up, walked to the hallway closet, and pulled out a small bag I hadn't seen before. Her hands were shaking as she placed it on the table. "If you really want to know," she said quietly, "look for yourself." My heart pounded as I opened the zipper. Inside were printed photos, notes, receipts, and letters. Letters written by someone I knew. Someone from our past. Someone I never thought would be connected to this. They were all from our cousin, someone who had once been like a brother to both of us but had moved away years ago after a family fallout. He was married now, had kids, and supposedly cut ties with most of us. But there, in my hands, was proof that he had been in contact with my sister, and not just casually. The letters were emotional, personal, and full of words that hinted at something more than just friendship. I looked up at her, stunned. "Why him?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes welled up, but she didn't answer. Instead, she reached for one of the envelopes and pulled out a recent letter. It was dated just 2 weeks ago. The handwriting was shaky, the words desperate. He had written about needing to see her again, about keeping their connection hidden. And then the final line, "If anyone finds out, it could destroy everything." That sentence hit me like a punch. This wasn't just about feelings. This was about secrets that had the power to tear our entire family apart. And the worst part? My sister wasn't just caught in it, she was part of it. The stakes had changed. What I thought was a private emotional conflict had now become something much bigger. Something that involved betrayal on a level I hadn't even imagined. My heart was racing, and I felt the ground slipping again, but this time it wasn't just about trust. It was about protecting the people I loved from a truth that could ruin us all. I wasn't sure what came next, but I knew the damage had already begun. I sat in silence, the weight of everything crashing down on me. The letters, the late-night meeting, the emotional distance, it all made sense now. My sister had been secretly reconnecting with our cousin, someone who had been almost erased from family conversations after a bitter fallout years ago. But the deeper I read into those letters, the more I realized this wasn't just about two people catching up behind closed doors. There were feelings involved. Feelings that crossed a line. I finally asked her the one thing I had been afraid to say, "Were you in love with him?" She looked at me for a long time, eyes full of shame and fear. Then she nodded. Just once. Quietly. I felt the air leave the room. For a second, I couldn't even process it. Our cousin. The one who disappeared after hurting people we cared about. The one we were told to forget. And now here he was, back in her life, back in our world, and not as family, but as something else. She explained how it started with a message on social media, just checking in. Then came long conversations about the past, regrets, things left unsaid. He told her things she had never heard from anyone in the family. About how he felt misunderstood, pushed away. She listened. She believed him. And slowly, she started to feel seen again. She said she didn't plan for anything to happen. But the connection grew stronger. And then, it was too late. I asked if it had gone further, but she shook her head. It wasn't physical, she said, but it felt more real than anything I've ever had. She looked broken, like someone who had been carrying too much for too long. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to yell at her for risking everything. But I also saw the pain in her eyes, the confusion, the guilt. She didn't need judgment. She needed someone to pull her back. We agreed to stop it. To cut off contact completely. She promised she would delete everything, block him, walk away. We even sat together and watched as she removed him from her life, piece by piece. I believed her. For the first time in weeks, I thought the nightmare was over. The tension eased. The air felt lighter. We were slowly rebuilding the trust we had lost. But just 2 days later, I found another envelope in her room, hidden, unopened. This one wasn't from him. It was addressed to her, in our mother's handwriting. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a letter written years ago, never sent, confessing that our mother had once been in love with the same man, our cousin, before he married and left. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just my sister's secret. This was something deeper. Something generational. A pattern repeating itself. And suddenly, I realized we hadn't ended the story. We had only uncovered how far back it went. I stared at the letter in silence, my hands trembling, my thoughts racing. That familiar handwriting, our mother's, felt like a ghost reaching out from the past. The words inside were raw, honest, and filled with a kind of heartbreak I'd never known existed in her. She wrote about how she had once loved our cousin when they were young. Before the falling out. Before he left and married someone else. It was the kind of love that was never allowed, never spoken of, but it clearly never faded. She had buried it for years, hidden it behind family loyalty and silence. Suddenly, everything made more sense. The tension that had always surrounded his name. The way Mom changed the subject when he came up. Even her silence when we asked why no one spoke to him anymore. It wasn't just about a family disagreement, it was about a pain too deep to explain. I confronted my sister one last time. I showed her the letter, and she broke down. She had never seen it before. She didn't know. She thought her connection with him was something new, something hers alone. But now, knowing our mother had gone through something so similar, it felt even heavier. Like history had repeated itself in the cruelest way. We sat together for a long time that night, two sisters tangled in a truth that spanned decades. We cried, not just for what had happened, but for everything we didn't know. For the secrets that shaped us without us ever realizing it. and for the love that never had a place to belong. In the end, she did walk away. For real this time. No more letters, no more calls. She deleted everything and promised to start fresh, with honesty and with distance. We both agreed to keep the letter from our mother private. Some stories, we felt, were better left resting. But we learned from it. We understood our family in a new light, and maybe that was the most important thing. Life slowly went back to normal. The house felt lighter. Our bond, though changed, felt stronger. There was trust again, but now it was rooted in something deeper, truth. Hard truth. And healing. This whole journey taught me that infidelity isn't always physical. Sometimes, it's emotional. Sometimes, it lives in silence, in secrets, in the things we don't say. And sometimes, it travels through generations without anyone noticing until it's too late. But the real lesson was about facing what's hard to face, about choosing truth over comfort, and letting go of what could destroy the people we love. My sister sat close to me that night, and I felt something was off. I was right. But in the end, what I found wasn't just betrayal, it was a hidden part of our family's story. A story that changed everything. And maybe, just maybe, gave us the chance to break the cycle and begin again. 48.